Welcome to Planning Commission tonight. Here's, we have 4 commissioners here. Commissioner, come on, brain, turn on. Commissioners Frisbee and Himuli are both excused today. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Whatever you want.
Sure. Our father and Debbie were right there together last night and thankful for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Payson. We're grateful for what they've been doing so. That's what I've spent a great purpose. Being able to accomplish what things are on the agenda. Their minds and their focus that we'll be able to do things which will be best for the community. And we ask this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you. Item 3 there is the approval of minutes for 2 meetings. So for February 26th and March 12th. Everybody had a chance to review those?
They're in solid order.
No issues or problems?
No.
Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yes. I second the motion to approve.
I'm not making it. I'm asking for one.
Oh, you're asking for?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm making a motion there that we approve the minutes from February 26, 25 and March 12th to 2025.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a second. We have 2 seconds.
Blair can have it.
Here, Blair, so I chose you.
Chew on.
All in favor by yes?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Good. Public forum? I see no public.
Bob.
Bob. Oh, I do see one.
Just jumping on to watch. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to action items. Item 5.1 is a subdivision plat amendment, a request for Marco Dominguez to amend the subdivision plat for high quality carports plat A, consolidating a couple of parcels and creating a single parcel. And then when this is done, it'll go back to city council for easement.
Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about
We'll
that.
talk about that. So turn it over to you.
So on the screen there, you can see, this is the existing plat for subdivision.
Enlarge it. Should be able to go to, it won't do it there, but you should be able to go to, down in the more, or yeah, there. Hide, let's see, full screen, there you go. And then minimize the people. There we go.
So this is the existing plat for high quality carports. What is going to happen with this would be to include this parcel. You can see with my cursor just off to the, I guess it would be the west of this current parcel. And so I will show you the utility easements that potentially would be vacated, and then you can also see what the final plat will look like. So this is the current plat like we talked about, and in yellow is the area that would be going to city council to vacate this 10-foot public utility easement. The reason being is, again, this parcel where my cursor is to the left would be joining, and then therefore the public utility easement would be on the westernmost edge of the new parcel. So showing that here, this is what the new parcel would look like.
If it was left in the yellow, it would go, what is that, 150 feet inside the 103 feet or whatever that is.
Yeah, right here it says 103.
Yeah, it'd be
So this is
103
the
feet
piece.
into the middle of the park there.
Yep. So the final plat looks something like this. Any motion to approve would be contingent upon city council vacating the easement. Otherwise, this plat would have to be amended to include that. Yes.
So there's already an easement on there, a 10-foot easement in the middle of it. Is that correct?
Well, there's an
This
existing.
lot doesn't exist. Only the lot that's smaller, you can see this hatch marked here.
Yes.
That's the other piece of property, and if the line just continued straight up, that's the other piece of property.
Okay, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to, because this ain't big enough to see. So basically the easement went right straight up the little, where your little arrow is.
Yes, so the easement, this is the current lot, and the easement goes up right along this edge here.
But there is a lot to the
There
left
is.
of that.
Yeah, this is an added piece of property that the,
So you're adding that piece to this.
correct.
Okay, so then you're gonna move the easement to the outside edge.
If city council approves the vacation of that, yes.
So they gotta approve that, to move it to the outside edge where you could combine
this-
the two lots.
This plat can be recorded and approved by this body showing the easement here. But the vacated easement, which is being not shown on here, is right about here. And so that would be a city council
That
decision.
requires the city council to do it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm just trying to get everything
we
in
are the
line where
governing
there
authority
was a
on this
property
small
line. That's why we have the utility easement, because it went through the middle of the two properties, but now it's combined. So all we're looking for is combining it so that then they can vacate it and then have city council. approve it.
Correct. So
Okay,
this body's decision is only about modifying the subdivision plat to include that new piece of property. The vacation of the easement will be city council.
yeah, that's why I'm just trying to make sure, because I wasn't sure exactly where the line was between the two properties. That's why I wanted to verify what I.
The nice thing about this is I can draw on here, so.
Go
It's,
ahead and draw.
it's approximately right there,
Yeah. So that's the other property on the left side of it.
correct?
Then he bought that and then now. Okay, yeah, just want to get everything in my head, so
Okay.
I.
And we just want to make sure it's clear for the record, so.
Yeah,
Any other questions about this?
no,
Okay, any discussion?
It's pretty straightforward.
It's very reasonable. And again, as it was said, we've got to, in the motion, if we, motion to, accept this change, we've got to say that it's contingent upon city council approval of vacation of the easement. Otherwise, this plat would have to have that easement in it.
Correct.
So just to, does the really matter as far as this easement is concerned? The property to the north and the property to the south, by vacating the existing easement, we're not creating any bottlenecks or problems.
No, and actually, you can see on this plat. He's gonna dedicate this hatched area to the city, so it'll actually allow for this street corridor to continue. And therefore, he would also improve this section of road and connect to, I think this is 1100 west right here. So,
And it actually lines up with the edge of the road, all that kind of stuff, so. It's actually,
on the north,
it makes no sense unless there was something already in there to leave that easement.
the north, there is potential to put a road on the north, but the city doesn't feel as if that's appropriate at this time. But we have the deferral agreement on this property that has also already been amended. That would include the new piece of property, saying that when that road goes in, then the owner of these properties would have to be a participant in helping to install those improvements.
Any other questions or comments?
no,
Okay, I need a motion.
Wait, what was the significance into the carport lot or carport?
This is the name of the
That's the
subdivision.
name of the
Oh, that's the
subdivision.
subdivision.
Yeah, high quality carport plat A.
And this new plat is plat B.
put a big carport out on
High
it.
quality carport's plat B is the new.
Correct.
And so this is an approval, not a recommendation.
That's correct.
That's correct.
We are the
Deciding body.
deciding body in this.
I move that we approve the subdivision plat amendment as requested with conditions, that, this vacation of the easement be approved by the city council and any other conditions that staff has established.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? No, we gotta do roll call, don't we? Or do we?
We do need to do roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Brinkerhoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Beecher, yes. Okay. That'll go to city council, probably the next one,
It
won't
will
it?
be the second,
So that if they approve the vacation, it's all done.
correct.
All right, next item is a work session, and that's why we're in this room.
Correct. And you've all done the homework, right?
I read through it, yes.
Quickly.
I tried not to fall asleep.
So we've been trying to get through the zoning districts. Last time we talked about the residential districts. This is the remainder of the districts except for our overlay zones. So we'll try to talk about those next time. Anything in particular that anybody has comments or questions on in your reading that you'd like to discuss?
I had a couple of questions. One was I was just gonna whine with professional office, I think professional office excluded, engineering. Professional office, I just want to want engineer is professional.
I think the professional office is more along the lines of medical professions.
It is, and it isn't. There's a lot of stuff that isn't have anything to do with medical professions in there. And so that's the reason I was saying that it was a conditional use for engineering. Everything else was,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah, I looked at appendix A is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And then what was
We
the
don't
other?
want engineers, what are you talking about?
Well, I just,
We'll address appendix A in the later meeting.
I know, we will, but that's part of the,
That is interesting why that is stated.
yeah, it just seemed weird that professional office engineering.
I think the conditional might have to do with, oftentimes engineering offices also have equipment and construction material things.
Well, but an engineering office doesn't. An engineer that is tied to a contractor would, but an engineering office doesn't have that kind of stuff.
But I suppose they could.
They could.
That's the only reason why I'm saying.
That's the thing. And then, the other one was, it was the limits on height in professional office. That seemed to me that it was limited to 35 feet. That means 2 stories. That's it.
And that might be something that the city needs to consider.
Especially considering
overall.
a lot of hospitals are a lot taller than that.
Yeah.
And so this is a hospital specific type zone and 2 stories didn't seem like the right answer.
Let me put that in.
Yeah, you're 35 feet on a lot of stuff.
It is, that's the highest in anything in the city.
Well, you're
35
talking
feet.
3-story city build, or like a apartment building.
Well, 35 feet, you couldn't do a 3 stories.
That's what I'm saying. That's,
It would be, you 35 stories or 35 feet in a commercial setting would be, 2 stories only. Because
that's-
you've got to have almost 12 feet from floor to floor in a commercial setting.
yeah, well, it's like we've talked on different things where we've said, well, you can have 3 stories, but then you look at other things and then you online and it says 35 feet.
Yeah.
And they're talking as a 3-story building, but like you say, a commercial building, you need 12 foot per floor.
Our code typically, and I think it says it in here. Okay, it doesn't say it in here, but most of the time, I think it's in the residential zones, it
It
says that it's 35 feet or 2 stories, whichever is less.
So now what about our apartments? When we consider that where you go 3 stories, they're taller than 35 feet.
Often,
So that's why I'm saying, because you got that in your residential, and now you've also got it in your commercial.
yeah, this might be something that needs to be.
That's something that needs to be looked
revised
at.
in Various areas. I think our multifamily residential does allow for higher,
It does, but I was surprised that professional office,
you know.
when I read through it.
Well, and quite honestly, even some of our commercial.
Some of the commercial does too, but professional office was the first place I found it.
Yep.
So,
Likewise, is there other concerns with height in any of the other?
well,
zones?
there's some others that I think we ought to consider it in. If you go,
In your commercial and your, S1,
let's see,
I think all of them kind of got the 35 foot in there.
central commercial zone. You know, we already have taller than 35 feet in some of those. But I can't remember.
So central commercial has the same language though.
Yeah.
So that might be something to consider changing too.
And yeah, you start going to get some bigger businesses in here, they're gonna wanna go 3 and 4 stories for a business, you're gonna have to.
Central commercial does have a caveat that it says unless reviewed and approved by the fire chief.
Yeah,
So that might be okay to just leave that alone.
So if the fire chief approves to have the 4-story or whatever,
Correct.
so.
and that's the same thing with general commercial, special highway, I can't remember, what did it say?
is there any criteria that the fire chief needs to follow?
Yes,
Anywhere.
I mean, it's based off of fire trucks and.
Typically, you have to be able to get, there has to be, for access, there has to be elevators, there has to be all sorts of things. There has to be fire suppression inside the building.
So the fire chief would look at a potential plan and see if it complies.
Yeah, fire chief or designee, we have the fire marshal, looks at building plans and they're actually doing it for a hotel that we're considering. And it's gonna be higher than the 35 feet there.
Yeah, see, special highway service zone, which is where the hotel is, says 35 feet. Unless reviewed and approved by the fire chief. So. I just think it's something we ought to look at.
Yeah.
And maybe have, instead of just a fixed thing and then. The reason I'm thinking of is instead of always going to the fire chief, we say as long as it meets fire codes, it can be up to this. For these kind of structures. Is maybe what we ought to look at. On that. Because a hotel that's only 2 stories is kind of useless. For example, a hospital that is limited to 2 stories, if you ever wanted to go, because vertical is a lot cheaper to build than wider. And I know people don't like the height of some things because it takes away from the hometown ugly feel of everything, but.
If we limit it to where the height is, I mean,
Right.
that's where we're gonna have to decide where the height needs to go in.
Right.
Well, and quite honestly, Payson's growing and things are coming this direction. And a lot of that is going to be added density, and the density should go where it's appropriate to go, and density often means more height.
Right. Right, and that's, it's gonna happen. I mean, even in the heavy industrial zone, it's 35 feet and it does say primary structure, primary building or structure. But in heavy industrial, there's sometimes things that are a lot taller than 35 feet. For example, the concrete plant. There's stuff
Or
out,
they've got edifices, is that
Yeah.
a good word? I wouldn't call them structures per se,
but
but they've
things,
got things that are higher than the.
Yeah, you got your silos and your bins,
yeah,
they gotta get elevated to get the material in and out.
for that matter, our power plant is taller than 35 feet. So we need to look at that, in my opinion. And those were that was the major things I found
Okay,
myself.
other comments from any of these sections?
We've talked about we need to work on the central commercial zone. We need to, or the historic preservation zone in the downtown area, or whatever you want to call it. And so we may still need to come up with something that works there.
And I think the biggest, well, one of the biggest things in the central commercial often comes down to parking.
Yeah.
And it's because there's so limited amount of parking, because buildings are right next to each other, it's historic buildings, it's whatnot. And what is a method that works that we could apply to current and new businesses? And maybe some of that doesn't work. I mean, right now, we're just kind of doing our best to accommodate businesses, but also follow the code.
Right.
And it's hodgepodge.
It's an area we need to try to figure out, and maybe planning commission, city isn't the ones to do that. Maybe it ought to be a consultant that figures out what we do with that kind of stuff.
We talked years ago about, trying to, people within walking distance of Main Street.
Yeah.
Downtown there. Just with the idea that the more foot traffic we got, the better those businesses in that area would be. And so that, I think that's part of the issue here. Parking is obviously an issue. Lots of communities put parking below the structure.
Yeah.
And there are ways to deal with this, but that's certainly what that central commercial zone needs, is some additional.
Yeah, it needs parking.
And people.
Other concerns with central commercial?
As you're talking central commercial, you're talking about new buildings? Is that what you're?
Just the zones.
Zoning.
Zoning. Like you say, we need to do more on parking, but like you say, if we're gonna bring some more businesses in, we ought to make them it's no different than putting a foundation under a house, put underground garages underneath some of these that are coming in. I mean, yes, it's more, adding more money to them, but it's still giving us some parking. I mean, you look at BYU, all the apartments there, they've got a lot of underground parking on most everything they've got. So it's one way of alleviating some parking is make it look like a foundation and put the parking underneath.
Another,
Unfortunately, with historic buildings, that would be tough.
I'm talking new buildings coming in.
Yeah, new buildings coming in, but even then, that's probably gonna double the cost of the building to put in parking structures that are subgrade or at grade, and then the buildings, the users
But
up
still-
above. But
and
Yeah,
another,
still a foundation. I mean, you might have to be a little taller. And have some piers
that
in the
might be
middle of it.
something to consider. But there's not a lot of land in the central commercial area for raw.
No,
buildings.
unless you tear something down.
Yeah,
The other issue with parking in that area is, do we need to look at, as the city, as some of the property that the city owns around there, adding it as parking so there can be more walking? For example, just to the south of the central commercial zone, north of the park. Do we need to look at that and make that into parking?
I think I just had that conversation with someone today, so.
To help with the walking atmosphere of this area.
And quite honestly, it may help with events and things at the park.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that could definitely be something to be explored by staff and council, and get any kind of recommendations from planning commission would be useful in that regard too, so.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm Sarah Ogden. I live here in Payson. Came from Provo. I really love the multi-story parking garages in downtown Provo. Obviously, they're kind of tall and ugly, and that's not really the aesthetic that Payson is looking for, but I do think one maybe north of the park
I
could be.
know that the
very
city's
helpful.
talked about that. It's obviously a multi-million-dollar structure to
Huge
build.
project.
And the city doesn't feel as if it's appropriate yet, but yes, that is something that will be needed eventually.
I think so.
Another thing,
And you can set those up so that, if you go in there without paying, you can get lots of tickets. I've got a ticket several times.
well, the city can acquire a lot of new vehicles. Another thing to consider, and this is something we'll bring to you actually next time, but our next meeting is on April 9th, and we're going to bring the moderate income housing report to you.
Oh, yippee.
And with that, we are proposing several additional strategies. The state requires a minimum of 3 for our size of city. We're proposing potentially to have a total of 9. And part of that is in case we submit this to the state and they say, well, you don't meet this one, this one, and this one, we still can meet several of them and therefore meet the
I meet the
criteria.
criteria, yeah.
But with that, one of those is the consideration of permitting residential in commercial zones. Currently in the central commercial, you can have an apartment either in a basement or above the first level.
Right.
But that might be something to consider differently, but at the same time, we would have to structure any language in the central commercial to give precedence to commercial enterprises and not residential development. Residential development would just need to be something that maybe is addressed somehow. There was legislation before the state legislature this year about that. If I remember correctly, it did not pass, but you know the state's looking at it, and so it may actually be something that happens in the near future, and then we'd have to be forced to do something like that. So I'm just bringing that up as a teaser for you. Other thoughts on central commercial?
You don't have a rich uncle, we could just let loose there with lots of money to get.
I'm still waiting for that rich uncle to die and let me have an inheritance. But no, I don't have that rich uncle. That's the hard part. Okay, so let's go to commercial arts and preservation. If I remember correctly, this was a zone that was established, but we don't actually have anything zoned.
We have
in the
no
city
place in
yet.
the city that's zoned as.
But I know that, for example, Councilmember Hewitt really likes the idea of this zone.
He does.
And I don't disagree with him, but I think we have to have whatever it is we want to be in this zone
And we need to pick an area for it.
Yep.
If we're gonna have it. That's always been my thought on this is that if we're actually gonna have this zone listed on our books, we probably ought to have someplace designated it.
I mean, the very least, Petite Knee could be zoned that right now, right?
Right.
But there could be other things potentially that would fit in this criteria.
The Hubish, that could be that, but I'm not sure where else we would do it, to be honest with you. Unless you turn Memorial Park into that.
Does this
Right.
zone designation, if you zone a piece of property, does that prevent the city from ever taking down a structure? Hewish being an example, there's a lot of money and effort and sweat going into preserving that building. But it is right downtown, and if an opportunity come along, somebody wanted to develop something wonderful, I don't know what that would be, but something wonderful. If it's in that arts and preservation, would that prevent that opportunity from happening?
Or does that fall under that criteria right there? Arts and preservation, I mean, you got theater.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The theater would have to stay. There would not be a way to bring in this other cool thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, zones can change, remember, we can change zones.
Unless something is designated, I would say maybe our city attorney could help me on this, but unless something's designated as like a monument, right? Even something that's on the historic register
Can go away.
still go away.
It
But
can,
something that's designated.
it
as
takes
protected or
mitigation and it
something.
takes other things, but it can go away.
That would have to look into.
Wow. Stumped you the first day.
Stumped you already the first
Hey,
night.
April
Oh,
seventh,
yeah,
that's a
that's
first
right.
day. I'm
April
still
seventh.
attending as assistant city attorney
Oh.
to report to the new city attorney, but
That's
yeah, that-
interesting, reporting to
I gotta
yourself.
report to myself what we're doing here tonight.
So for example, that zone. It says the CAP Commercial Arts and Preservation Zone is established to create an environment where historic preservation, building restoration, and viable commercial activities can coexist in a positive manner. In order to accomplish the development goals supported by the city council for this district, it is recognized that building renovations will need to occur so that the structures can accommodate the latest technological advances. Furthermore, public and private infrastructure will need to be updated to provide efficient and effective municipal services. All of this work must be completed while maintaining a business-friendly atmosphere. Obviously, public-private cooperation is critical and all funding opportunities must be explored. That's the purpose and characteristics of the zone. It does have its own list of items in the appendix A with what's permissible in there. But based off of the characteristics of it, a lot of the historic area of downtown might be other areas considered for this zone.
Yeah.
And that might also help with some of the parking issues we have, well, at least legally help, maybe not actually alleviate the problem, but it might allow for additional exceptions for reduced parking, for example.
Yeah. And isn't there, I thought, Brian said that there was some possibility of, if you have a historical and arts preservation zone type thing, that kind of a thing, there was a possibility of additional funding available through sources and stuff like that.
There might be some historic preservation funds available. And that's if you have a historic district, and if this classifies as a historic district, then perhaps. There also is the Main Street program that is done through the state, and they do have some grant monies available that they
And
allow,
we are now in level 2 or whatever it
something
is,
like that. Yeah.
whatever that second tier is for that on Main Street. So that's good. My biggest thing with this is that it's not so much the zone itself, it's just that if we're gonna have it, let's try to figure out where to put one, some of this zone.
Consider areas that this would be appropriate for.
Right.
And maybe that would be a joint.
That'd be a good
discussion
thing for
with
the,
city
for
council.
city council and planning commission to talk about.
Agreed. Any further comments on that zone? Doesn't sound like we necessarily have comments to change things, more like explore.
Explore options.
Is.
Yeah.
You can find what preserving means.
Right.
You wanna preserve the structure, you wanna preserve.
The look.
Is it all of the above?
Yeah.
Maybe define that would be, because, I mean, we went on one of those walking tours in New Orleans, in the French Quarter. And they have the strictest laws on preserving
Oh, yeah.
those buildings and facades. Is it want to be that strict, or does it want to be a little bit more flexible?
Good idea.
Okay, comments on the general commercial zone. This area basically surrounds oftentimes the central commercial.
Yeah. For the most part.
Pretty similar in nature, other than it doesn't have the Main Street historic buildings and such in it.
This is also along 198.
Primarily.
Yeah.
And I can bring it up if you like, and I can.
Why don't you bring up next so everybody can see where that's at? Just so we get an idea of what the feel for it.
So you can see, well, we may need to zoom in a bit. You can see central commercial's primarily here, and the colors are not great because they're more or less the same.
Right.
So central commercial here, general commercial along here, a piece here, and looks like we have a piece over by the golf course, which I think is primarily the golf course building and the RV park, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, thoughts, questions, comments about general commercial?
Just look at something real quick. Or whatever.
One of the things about the general commercial zone is that there's. And it's part of the fact that we're an older community, but most of those business buildings along that route have been here forever and no two of them look alike.
And a lot of them were residential and some of them converted to commercial.
Yeah, and so it doesn't have a feeling of place. Does that make
It
sense?
just kind of grew
It's
haphazardly.
just haphazard.
Yeah, I don't know how you would change the code in the zone to help that problem, but
I think what we would do, and we do have this now, but we definitely want to revise it because was last done, I think, 20 years ago. But we have development guide or design guidelines for buildings throughout the city. And we do have some for the central commercial, or at least it doesn't define central commercial as much as it defines the corridors.
The corridors, yeah. This is the look we want on these corridors, yeah.
And perhaps that look should be similar in nature to what we want to see in the central commercial, but maybe not.
yeah, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be the buildings themselves. It could be the landscaping style, the way that the streetscape.
The street lighting, the layouts. A lot of it, we can't do much on the street because it's UDOT road along 198, but we can do off the road.
Yeah, outside of the UDOT right away, we can do quite a bit.
But from what I understand, we actually need to get UDOT permits to even do landscaping and stuff. But they usually grant them, so it's not a big deal.
Shouldn't be a
But
problem.
I know the Zions Bank that was just getting renovations actually had to get a,
That's probably because they were inside the UDOT right away.
yeah. Yeah, so all of that within that.
Yeah.
I don't know how far their right of way extends, if it just goes to the back of the sidewalk or if it even potentially goes further.
It depends. Some areas are more than others, so.
In the code, it does talk about design guidelines, so it's,
You know,
you do have it
design
listed.
guidelines, they are dated, very dated, and,
Okay,
but at least it's a start. And that's something we want to get revised, and we did have, a college student that worked on some design guidelines for us and sort of did it and then kind of disappeared and.
Did we ever get that data?
Yes, but it was really very generic.
It was pretty rough.
It was like they were doing a great job in preparing it all, and then something happened. I think there was a sickness or something. And so anyway, it was a good base work. And then if any of you were in the city council meeting a few months ago, there was some students from the academy in Mapleton or something like that,
Yeah.
whatever that academy is called. They did some kind of design work for some downtown areas and incorporated some various urban design layouts and whatnot. And that could potentially be some items that could be updated in our design guidelines.
I think that would be good. That group actually did a pretty good job of showing what could happen.
Yeah.
Along with the other group that did the stuff along Main Street as well.
Mhm.
Both of those were well thought out.
And some of that just really needs to translate into actual
Design guidelines.
design guidelines that we adopt and incorporate.
I agree.
So I'll put in that section about general commercial and maybe even central commercial is update and incorporate design guidelines. Okay, our next zone is the special highway service zone, and I'll show you on the map. We've got several of those, but it's all of these yellow areas, so
Near
here.
the interchanges.
Yep, near the interchanges, and here,
And that's the whole purpose of it, is to draw people off the freeway.
yes, gonna be your big box commercial, it's gonna be your hotels, it's gonna be large gas stations, restaurants with drive-ups and
And,
things like that.
we'll actually add another one when the new interchange comes
Yeah,
in,
there will be somewhere
right there.
here. And that might extend down along here because
Right.
that's where that road is gonna continue, just similar to what 800 South does now. Thoughts on that zone in particular? From the language in the code?
I saw nothing in it that I thought needed tweaked, but maybe somebody else did.
That area also has design guidelines, and again, it was the same design guidelines. so
They need to be
they're
updated. They need to be updated. Yeah.
The thing that I think, and getting back to Blair's point, would be helpful, would be maybe we have, and then coming back to your comment, Kirk, maybe we have minimum heights and minimum things, but they could get density bonuses for better design. You know,
Yeah,
something like
That's not a
that,
bad idea.
or maybe they could add a residential element if they add additional design and
Right.
additional amenities, things like that. And part of that is incorporated, because this is the only zone that allows for our mixed use overlay, which allows for residential. But there's not a lot of language in the mixed use about design.
No, there's not. So that would be good to add some of that to that.
So would that be fair to say? Incorporate minimums and then add density bonuses such as design enhancements?
So you're talking about putting like houses above or second story apartments on some of that is what you're talking about?
Potentially, or elsewhere on the property.
Kind of like we're doing over here on 8 South with
Yeah, with that Spring Creek Landing one.
Yeah. So we annexed into 11, what is it, about 1100 South, something like that? Down about where Taylor Ranch is. Is that part of our,
It's still in no man's land.
well, that's what I'm thinking, but it's in our boundaries other than Santa Quinn, is
It's in
what I'm
our
saying.
annexation, part of it's in our annexation declaration.
It's in the expansion area, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm just, because I was just thinking, I know it ain't in yet, but I mean, that'd be another play to put that S1 in too. And make an on and off ramp
When the
right there.
interchange goes in there, yeah, 124th or 128th or whatever that is.
Yeah, it'd be about 128 right
And
there.
from what I understand, there is no timeline on that yet.
No, it's not even on UDOT's
I
radar yet.
think it might be in their 2050 plan, but that doesn't mean much other than they've identified that
There's a possibility.
for one. Yeah. We are talking with a property owner in the vicinity that wants to annex some property and that is also considering a general plan amendment for area just south of the Red Bridge development. And they own property just outside of the city boundaries, but they would want to incorporate a large general plan amendment that would therefore allow for them to do a zone change to add additional density in that area. And so So there is
That was the
some,
one that was in DRC a couple of 3 weeks ago, wasn't it?
correct, and they've come to city council and presented in a work session, some of their concepts and layouts. I think they came in November. So, and we've been working with them as staff for the past several weeks and trying to help them along before we actually bring it as an amendment that comes here to the planning commission and then on the city.
Well, I've heard rumors of that coming in. That's why I'm asking now, because I've heard different things coming in from Red Bridge.
But also part of that is part of the incorporation boundary for Spring Lake. So if and when Spring Lake actually incorporates, they did get the approval from state to actually incorporate as a.
So they're not done yet, deal yet.
But they have like a timeline to actually do the incorporation and therefore have their city leaders and all these things they have
That
to
would be
do.
in that area.
But that is in that area.
So
So-
that section through there on both sides of the freeway would come into Spring Lake.
So going back to this map, I'll show you. Well, it's hard for me when my screen's not on. Okay, so. The city's incorporation boundaries ends right here at 12,000. Okay, so anything further than this line here would be part of that.
So you'd be just about on the boundary line right there on that intersection.
And this right here, this is 12,000.
Yeah, 12.
This, the city would potentially like to be a new interchange, but I think it's been identified that this 12,400 would be 12,400 would actually be the interchange if and when that comes in.
I just figured if they put that through right there, that'd be a straight shot up to Quigley Quarry, and that'd alleviate all that truck traffic as far as our subdivision areas.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. it
And that would
definitely make
be
a lot of
something to really
sense.
look at.
It'd make work a lot better than where they're coming now. So.
Yeah, because they're probably taking what, 1950 and stuff, and coming up that road and getting on the
And then they
800
turn-
south. and-
Then they turn north and go along that little narrow frontage road.
Yeah, that's a lot of traffic for them apartments right there on that frontage road.
Yep.
I mean, just with, Maverick, we've got some of them belly dump trains coming up Main Street and then trying to turn on 100 north and then head back up to the pit. They're running right up over the sidewalk. We need to kind
Yeah,
of eliminate that down to one belly dump or not a train
I've
set
seen
up.
that several times, just coming to work in the morning, semis turning right there at Main Street and 198, and sometimes they'll go into the turning lane of the oncoming traffic to be able to make that turn.
That prosecuted them.
That's
That brought
legally,
cases against them.
that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to come in on oncoming traffic versus hang on that
But
side.
they
But I
also-
mean, it's
yeah,
also.
They also cut the sidewalk.
They
Yeah,
also did that
that's why I'm
final
saying.
upgrade.
One of these days, that monument's gonna get taken out.
That's what we need to limit that while we've got them working on that down to at least a semi trailer versus the train, just to alleviate some of that problem. While they're
I
working
don't know
on
how
it.
that's done. That's probably more of a police enforcement issue.
Well, I mean, it's something to be brought up. I mean, that's why I figured I'd bring it up here and then we could do something to help curtail that because it's gonna bust up our sidewalks and then you got a traffic jam there if they can't make the turn because some people aren't gonna be obliging to the truck trying to make that turn. I mean, everybody's trying to work together, but there's a lot of times they don't, but I just seen that a bunch of times today, the last couple of days, seeing that, them trains. That's not made for a semi, let alone a belly dump train trying to make that corner.
Yep.
So I don't know whether that's something we can bring up to, I mean, I know they're trying to get their tonnage out, but it's for our traffic, it ain't feasible.
Well, that could definitely be something, I guess, brought up at council and we can bring it to police department and see if there's anything they can do.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is that 198 is a state road.
Yeah,
And I think Main Street's a state road.
Yeah, it's state road.
It is.
yeah, it's up to the light.
So they have, whatever rights they have to potentially use that. And we can't necessarily create a detour that would be more, better alternative, but.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make a detour. I mean, if they're gonna use it, we need to help alleviate a problem.
And I don't know what we do other than take out part of that curve or something, but
Maybe that's when you get to the state legislators that represent us.
But I mean, where we made that radius for the bus right there on 100 West, right there, I don't know, we need to make that more of a radius there on that corner to help alleviate the problem or?
Well, the city owns the corner there.
Yeah, I don't think it would be incredibly hard to do.
No. No.
The UDOT owns all the road and make them pay for it.
Right.
So,
So I just thought I'd throw it up. I mean, but I mean, I just seen that where you got 12,000. I mean, that's where they want to come up. But if you went to, it would be right there, Taylor Ranch, and run that right straight through. There's nobody really in the way to do it. But I mean, if it's not in our, I know we've
Yeah.
got other areas we're working
Yeah,
further north, but
you can see what is it, the horse track or whatever
Yeah.
that's still there? So the city's annexation boundary would only go about midway through that, where you can see the off-ramp is right there. I guess it's not even an off-ramp, it's that overpass right there.
it's overpass where you got the,
Yeah,
comes
that
back, yeah.
would be the extent of how far the city would potentially annex without some sort of further agreement with the county and or Spring Lake if they incorporate.
Our original boundary was down at 12,400.
Yeah.
But we modified it with Spring Lake.
I think we modified it
With
with
Saniquin.
Saniquin and then Spring Lake did their thing to potentially incorporate. So then they took in a bunch of this and what their municipal boundaries actually become is yet to be determined, but.
Right.
And if.
And whether they can actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was determined that it was feasible, but feasible and doable are two. different
Feasible
things.
and are they willing to pay the money to make it happen? Is the
Yeah.
other story.
Other-
Well, I don't have anything on the special highway.
I just thought I'd throw that out. I mean, if it was in our boundaries, that'd be another place to put the S1. But it's not in our boundary, but. I mean, it could be, but some,
And very, very likely, if that is ever made to be a actual interchange, that would definitely be done S1 there.
Yes, it would. So, or whatever similar.
Yeah.
By the adjoining cities.
Next up is our business park development zone. And this area, we're running out of space for.
Right.
This is the only area that it's actually zoned for business park.
Outsold all the lots.
Yeah, the majority of it is being developed or has developed, or we've at least explored some applications by potential developers. So some of the logic and thought process was to consider some of this purple area, pink area up above as potential business park.
The other option would be at the north interchange, when it
Correct.
goes in. That,
Some-
I like that better than myself.
Some of that was considered to be
out
with
there.
the UVU campus potentially being in this area and the new interchange and stuff, that might be another business park, or maybe it would be more like a tech park.
Right. But the same kind of
And
thing.
to the west, as that gets annexed in.
so you couldn't run like 3,500 in that area, 96, we couldn't. I mean, it's not in our area, it is in our zoning area, but that would be another spot.
Oh, you're talking like right here?
Yeah, right there in that area, right there, take that, carry that over on that there, you got some light commercial and business, and I mean, that'd be an ideal spot
I
for your.
think that some of this area, I want to say, has been explored as potential.
Yeah, you had
business
Justin
park.
Hill came in on that one
It has.
parcel that he tried to come in on.
Some property owners in that area or developers.
And part of that makes sense with, if we can actually connect the business park with this American Way coming up through somehow through here.
Right.
Yeah,
And connecting up, so.
Yeah.
But any other thoughts on the business park zone in general, on the language?
I didn't see anything in the language that needed work. Other than what I've already said, so.
Okay, we have the light industrial and heavy industrial zones.
And there's not a lot of difference. Other than in appendix A.
Oftentimes, if something is conditional in the light industrial, it's probably just permitted in the heavy industrial.
Exactly, that's the main differences.
But as you can see, we have very little heavy industrial, and I think that's primarily the Geneva batch plant and the city sewer treatment and power plant. That is by design. Um,
Yes, it is.
From what I've heard, the city's not necessarily exploring heavy industrial uses. Light industrial uses are oftentimes going into our business park as some sort of a manufacturing business type of thing, or going into our I-1. And those seem to be working out fairly well. But thoughts in general on either of those zones?
That's the only spot we've got for the industrial right there.
For the I-2, yes.
For the I-2, yes, the I-1 is scattered all over the place.
Yeah, the I-1, you can see it's the
Oh, okay,
red.
I see in the red, that's
Yeah, the I-1 is scattered all over the place, but the I-2 is essentially right there, that's it.
Part of the problem is these RMF are the same color, which we need to get this map changed to proper coloring, but
What's really the difference between an I-1 and a business park development?
the business park, we want it to be more of a professional business. So we want them to have offices, we want them to have,
They have showrooms.
even have showrooms and potential storefronts and things like that. It's really meant to be like a, I don't want to say the word professional office because that's a different zone, but it's meant to be an office park where
Whereas
businesses,
the industrial, they build stuff, but they don't sell it there other than to somebody else, not to regular consumers.
So you see the business park as having a consumer element in it.
it could.
Yeah. That's at least one part of it.
The industrial is heavily on manufacturing and or storage. Another big thing with the business park is we don't allow outdoor storage in the business park, whereas the industrial.
We want it to look nicer and
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that.
Okay, any other thoughts? That is the extent of what I wanted to cover tonight. Next time, we'll get to the rest. These are our remaining zones, and I think maybe what I'll do is possibly throw in the overlay zones in there for next time too. If you're really excited for some bathroom reading, future sections of our code are here. And I starred the ones that I feel like we need to definitely put some thought into, because these are ones that we've felt are either a little bit wonky or need some update or are kind of hot ticket items on occasion. So, and I can send this out if you guys want to see this too, so.
yeah, send that out to us and so we can kind of look at it a
so
little
we
bit
can
more
look
here
at
and there.
ones that you've got to start at least, that'd be good.
Yep. Okay, well, that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you, sir. So now we're down to item 6, reports, staff reports, training. So one thing I want to say is that this will be Blair's last time.
It's true.
And we
We're
really
gonna miss you.
appreciate Blair's input and time on the planning commission. It's been great to work with. We have a new, can we announce that?
Yes, he did accept.
Okay, we have a new planning commissioner to take Blair's spot. It's Bob Gitteford, he's online. Would you like to say anything, Bob?
Hi, everybody. Excited to be working with y'all and looking forward to it.
Bob, tell them a little bit about your background, Bob.
Yeah, so I currently work for a vertically integrated developer contractor out of Salt Lake, Wasatch Group. So I've got 20 years of construction experience, working in Texas, Utah, mostly, and then several other states, building multifamily, a bunch of other different types of projects. I helped estimate most of that work has been in estimating and pre-construction. So trying to price out projects and helping work with cities to get plans approved and projects built. Some of my projects, the Hale Theater in Sandy, Utah, the North Concourse, or North Terminal for the Salt Lake Airport. And then I've done several thousand homes and apartments down in Texas and different areas as well.
Good. Well, we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, Bob.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kirk.
As a matter of staff, if I may,
Yes.
we do have the biannual training by the Utah APA. And that's coming up April 7th through 9th. As Robert has said in the past, the city will pay for you to attend that if you would like. It will be in Logan this year, so good times up there in Logan. We also get a bit of a discount if we have at least 3 people attending, so let us know if that's something that's in your
Is March
interest.
what?
April 7th.
Oh, April.
No,
Where-
May 7th.
May 7th?
May 7th through 9th, so it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay,
Marty, did you have anything else on training and things? Because I know we talked about some training, and maybe it's just, we need to make sure we catalog it, or?
I think after, like, Bob comes in, we should do the planning commission 101.
Yeah,
We can go over some of the
and the
work, you know,
Do some
Yes.
Robert's Rule of Order.
yes,
some-
that's what I was
those kind
trying
of
to
things.
spit out, sorry.
yeah, all that kind of stuff, that'd be
Yeah.
good. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Blair?
Just thanks to everybody. It's been great to be a part of this and appreciate everybody's patience with me. And I've enjoyed the perspectives and the ideas and that everybody's brought. It's been informative and thanks for the support of staff.
Blair's been on the planning commission for a lot of years. so-
Yeah, how many years, Blair?
I'm trying to figure that out. Around 15.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He took a little break there for a bit when he
Yes.
went on a mission and a few other things, so. So,
That's awesome.
Thank you all.
Mhm.
Thanks for being here.
Camry or
I don't have anything to say.
Barry?
I'm just, we could make a motion that we can adjourn the meeting.
Okay, welcome our new city attorney, so thank you.
Congratulations.
Almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
First,
Gotta get it approved by the city council first.
You gotta present to city, or you gotta get presented before city council.
Yeah, and they gotta officially vote. That's the appointed position.
Well, I can't see where they're gonna say no. Especially considering some of them were probably involved in
They were, yeah,
they were involved in the interviews.
2 of them were involved in the interviews.
Yeah, so. Well, good. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. We have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
And we have a second, so I think we're adjourned.
Who motioned and who second?
Camry motion, Perry second.
Oh.
Or
I have-
Perry motioned and Camry seconded. Either one.
either one, it works.
You could say they both did.
No
So we gotta
contest.
make a vote.
I
don't think you need a roll call on that one.
No,
We don't need one?
no,
Okay.
nope, we don't.
Just wanna make sure it's official.